And we have our teen influencer, one of our first teen influencers in the Central Valley, Miss Heaven Rodriguez. She is a Mothers Against Drunk Driving teen influencer. Please give a big round of applause. And we have our victim survivor, Mr. Manuel Russ. He's going to be sharing his story about how impaired driving has changed his life forever. Please give a big round of applause. And we have his wife, Mrs. Kimberly Reynosa. She's also going to be sharing their family story about how impaired driving has impacted their life forever. Big round of applause. Okay, I want to take a selfie of all of us, so I'm going to jump on stage, and then everybody's going to do like a really smile so that I can put this on our MADD California social media page so that everybody can make the right choice this holiday season, yes? So let me get up here. Let's see. Look happy. Who's happy today? All right. Let's see. Okay, ready? Are you ready? Steady. Cheese. Thank you, guys. Okay, big round of applause for Community Talks and Mothers Against Drunk Driving Partnership. Thank you all.
Mr. Russ and Mrs. Reynosa, thank you so much for being here at McLane High School for our MADD committee talk today. Our goal here today is to change the hearts of minds and teens in our Central Valley community by talking about the real-life consequences of irresponsible alcohol consumption.
And I think we have a video that shows a bit about what happened to Mr. Russ. Can we take a look? Stand by, we're working on it. Okay, they're going to reload the video. So give them just a moment to get that all queued up, and then we'll take a look. The video is going to show you what happened to Mr. Russ on the road. He was driving to work when he was hit by a drunk driver. Okay, we're going to go ahead and start a little bit with the panel up here, and then once we've got the video ready, we'll give you that first-hand look at what happened on the road. But Heaven, go ahead and let's start off with our first question for Mr. Russ.
Okay. Manuel, can you please tell us a little bit about your life and prior to the crash?
barbecue a lot on my days off. You know, I made the best. You know, I just made the best of my life. And you know, I was making decent money. You know, I wasn't rich, nothing like that, but I was making decent money to where, you know, a wife had a choice, her choice, if she wanted to work or, you know, be pretty much running around all our kids to school and doctor's appointments and all that. So, yeah, I get, you know, I can answer later on more about, you know, just adds up to the ripple effects, you know, from there. But before my accident, I was just a family man. I was a family man and loved to barbecue, loved to have fun, loved to be at my kids' events, and just, you know, enjoy life.
And Kim, let me ask you the same thing, because Manuel alluded to that. How has your life changed since the accident? And can you tell us a little bit about what happened?
Well, how it changed is I went from a single parent household to basically a single mother. You know, now since the accident, I basically am a single mother. I am a caretaker now. You know, I trained to be a nurse, but I never knew that my nursing would end up taking care of my spouse. Basically, I'm his caretaker right now. I take care of him as well as, you know, help out my children during the day. Before, it was the same thing. You know, I'm a mother of 9, and I was blessed with having somebody that gave me the opportunity to stay home and raise them. So it was hard after the accident because now, you know, I was in charge of how are we going to pay the bills? You know, how are we going to function? Where are we going to live? And so I had to go back to work. You know, I had to go back to work and figure it all out by myself. So yeah, it's been hard since this accident. You know, I don't have that kind of support anymore.
Can I'm going to jump in here, sorry, but I want to, Manuel, just so we kind of know what happened that day, can you tell us about the accident that changed your life, the incident that changed your life?
Well, maybe I don't call it an accident because, you know, an accident is just that, you know, it's an accident. In this case, I call it an incident because it's something that could have been prevented. You know, somebody stopped his act, you know, to get behind the wheel under the influence. So the morning of my incident, you know, I always call it, especially when I do my speeches and stuff, you know, I always talk about everyday morning routines. You know, what's your morning routine? So in my case, my morning routine was I used to get up every morning. And my daughter, she used to sleep in our room, you know, every night, in the middle of the night, knowing that when I got up and went to work, I would tell her to sleep on my side of the bed. And by the way, her name's Reina. You know, she was born on my birthday. She's my birthday girl. So I used to call her birthday girl, and she used to call me birthday boy. So I woke up this particular morning, and I told her, you know, my birthday girl, why don't you sleep on my side of the bed? And I remember her smile. Her smile always started with her eyes. Always started with her eyes. You know, just glow, just light up. Big cheesy smile. And I remember she smiled at me, huge smile, and she had told me, okay, my birthday boy, I love you. I told her I love you too, there we go. So from there, you know, I went on my wife's side of the bed and I told her, all right, babe, I'm ready to go to work now. And she said, all right, babe, I love you. I told her I love you too. And she said, be safe. You know, this was my morning routine, and I told her always. So from there, I went, got my coffee ready, got my lunch ready, and I headed to work. Well, that was the last time I was ever able to see my daughter's beautiful smile, you know, my wife's face. And so I was on my way to work. And remind you, this is the back road, but that back road was my main way to work. And it was about 4:50 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. And I remember seeing a car swerve into my lane, but I didn't think nothing of it. I figured they were either on their way to work or on their way coming home from work. And, you know, they corrected themselves right away. So I didn't think nothing of it. So as we got closer, they swerved into my lane the last second, and I didn't have time to move out of the way. So what I do remember from there is that I remember I was in a bad incident. I remember my pickup truck moving. I didn't know if it was flipping. I had no clue what it was doing. And from there, I remember thinking, I'm in a bad incident. Well, at the time, I didn't know it was an incident. I was figuring an accident. I remember thinking, I'm in a bad accident. You know, I gotta help the people on the other car. What if they had kids? And I started panicking. And at that point, my son, at the time, he was 12. You know, this happened in 2018, September 18, 2018. And I started yelling for his name. And he wasn't answering me because he used to go to work with me sometimes because I was a truck driver. And I started yelling his name. I tried looking on the passenger side and I couldn't see him. And that's when in my head, that's when I started panicking. And next thing you know, from what I remember, it took fire departments 45 minutes to get me out of my pickup truck with the jaws of life. And I remember being in an accident, and I remember being in an ambulance. I remember throwing my wife's hands on my chest and her telling me, "Babe, you're gonna be okay. You let them do their jobs." But the crazy thing is that she was at home sleeping. So I remember from there, I would just, I remember saying, okay. I remember telling her, okay. But now to remind you guys, I did die 3 times. I died twice in the ambulance and once at the hospital. And you guys are seeing the video when they say hospitals said patients likely to 44, which is 1144 is the code that I was going to die pretty much. So I was in a coma, and long story short, my face and my whole left side is full of hardware and cadaver bones. And they had to reconstruct my whole face. I had a brain bleed in a part of my brain that was non-surgical. But I remember waking up from my coma. Now this was, of course, I don't know how much longer later, but when I woke up from my coma, I couldn't speak. I had no voice. All I see was pitch black. My body felt paralyzed. And all I could do was hear the doctor telling my wife and my family, because they were all crying, pretty much to pull the plug on me. Not those exact same words, but to pull the plug on me because I had no chance to live. I knew he was talking about me because, by the way, he sounded like Count Dracula. But I knew he was talking about me because I had no voice. My body was paralyzed. All I could see was pitch black. I remember with everything I had, I sat up. When I sat up, I remember hearing the nurses on the right side of me and the doctors like kind of flipping out, just tripping that I woke up. And the next time I woke up to pretty much the same thing. But this time it was the same. Count Dracula again was telling my wife that with all the brain damage I endured, that I was going to have no brain memory. That I wasn't going to remember her, let alone my own kids. And at that time I was like, why are you lying for? I'm not going to, it got me mad. I got pretty upset. So I started asking for something to write with, and they gave me a pen and paper. I'm not sure exactly what they gave me, but I started writing, and I remember the nurse on the right of me said, "Look, he remembers how to spell." But truth be told, the joke was on them because I didn't know how to spell before my accident. But from there, they were tripping out, and then from there, you guys will see in the video, they had to reconstruct my whole face. Now my face feels numb on my right side of my face, and my face is like 5-10 degrees warmer than my body. That's because I guess the nerves the damage that it took from the initial incident. They had to reconstruct my shoulder. They had my bone, my shoulder was ripped out of my skin. My bone was sticking out of my forearm. My femur was sticking out of my leg. I need another Cadillac knee replacement. It's not a regular knee replacement. And the doctor with the most experience that they had told me only done 3 of them. And then they tried to save my leg, they wasn't able to save it. And unfortunately I still need more surgery. But before we go further, before they show the incident, and this is actually live footage of my incident. So during this whole process, and this is what I need to make clear to everybody. This other person, got charged for this, But what they were saying, due to my incident, and now that I suffer through, I'm susceptible to seizures now because that scar that I have in the middle of my brain from the brain bleed. But if I was to fall and I was to pass away because of a fall, because of a seizure, or the brain damage I had took to my brain, or in the middle of surgery that has to do with my incident, it could be 10 years down the line, they will still go pick this person up and charge this person for vehicular manslaughter, even though she had already did time for this incident, because it's a whole different, more added to it. That's something that, a lot of people don't realize, that people that are driving under the influence, something happens later on, even though they, whatever happens and they did their whatever, something happens later on, they can still be charged for another count 20, 15, 20 years down the line.
And so even the driver who hit you is in prison right now, and you're saying that she could end up going away for life if you suffer more impact from the crash.
Thank you, Mr. Russ. The question that I have for you is, you crash and how quickly did everything change for you?
Honestly, during the crash, the only thing I remember was my pickup truck moving. Like, I don't know if it was flipping or I have no clue what it was doing. And my only memory was feeling my wife's hand on my chest, telling me it's okay, you're gonna be okay, they can do their job. So, but pain-wise, I think at that point I probably really was slipping into my coma. So I lost total before my emergency surgeries. They had 32 pints of blood just to prepare me for surgery. A total of 52 pints of blood in all. So I don't know. So the morning of my incident, that's pretty much everything I remember. But other than that, I remember just from what they tell me on how I looked before my surgery, before I went in, they said that the only way they were able to tell was me because my granddaughter's head name I have tattooed on my side of my head, which is Esperanza. In Spanish, Esperanza. In English, it's hope. Something my family never lost in me was hope.
Thank you, Mr. Russ. Mrs. Reynosa, let me ask you, what was it like to get the call that your husband had been in an accident and then to see him in the hospital for the first time?
I'm sorry. To me, it's like opening a big scab. It was like being punched in the stomach. It was 9:30 in the morning when the police came to my door, and this happened at almost 5 o'clock in the morning. I had already taken my kids to school. I had high school kids, I had elementary kids, I had junior high kids. I made my rounds that morning, took them all to school, got home, and just started my day. I opened up my house, the blinds, I made coffee, I even called my husband, because usually on a day-to-day he would call me at his first stop. And we would talk for a while, or he'd ask how the kids went, did the kids get to school on time and all that kind of stuff. And he didn't call me that morning. And at first, it didn't dawn on me like something happened or something was wrong. It was, oh, well, maybe he got delayed. His trailer got delayed at a warehouse, or, because it's happened before. He would call me on his lunch and, oh, I got stuck in traffic, or I got, whatever. So it didn't dawn on me that anything happened. I remember making coffee, and I left him a message. I called him and said, hey, I got home. I haven't heard from you. Give me a call. And what was weird is that it went straight to voicemail. Instantly. Didn't ring, nothing. It went straight to voicemail. And that kind of made me nervous because I was like, why all of a sudden did you turn your phone off? You know, he never turned his phone off. So I just left him a message, and then I remember walking towards the kitchen, and we used to have these big windows in the front of our house, and a sheriff pulled up to my house, and again, I still was not worried. I wasn't, did something happen, you know, because where we lived at the time in Modesto, we lived across the street from a park that had a lot of homeless people, and my husband had cameras around the house, so frequently we'd have sheriff or MPD show up to the house and say, hey, we see your cameras, can we look at your cameras to see if, you know, something happened across the street or whatnot. And so it didn't dawn on me again, like something happened. And I went out to the porch and I asked the officer, you know, I told him, good morning, how are you? And he says, oh, hello, ma'am. But he just, he was just like, and I said, yes, that's my husband. I said, what's wrong? I said, what happened? And he says, ma'am, all I can tell you is that you need to get to Memorial right away. Your husband's been in a really bad accident, and they transported him to Memorial Hospital, and you need to go right now. And I asked him, I said, is he alive? And he said, ma'am, you just need to get to the hospital. And I felt like I couldn't move. Like, you know, you see it on TV, like, you know, the shock. Like, you know, somebody's so in shock they can't move or they can't speak. That's exactly how I felt. And I remember running into the room because at that time my oldest daughter was staying with me and she was already out of school. And I remember running into her room and she wouldn't wake up. And we laugh about it now, but I remember running into her room and she wouldn't wake up, and I was trying to wake her up, and I kicked her. I kicked her, and I told her that she needed to get up, that her dad was in an accident. And then I remember getting to the hospital and walking up to the front desk and them telling me that I needed to sit down, that somebody would be with me. I didn't talk to anybody, and, you know, being in that situation, I was up there every 5 minutes. I need to talk to somebody. What's wrong? What's going on with my husband? And they would sit me down, and they would sit me down. And then finally, a social worker came over, and she told me, can we put you in a room? And I go, no, I don't want to be put in a room. I want to know where my husband's at. And that's when she told me that they were working on him. And I said, what do you mean working on him? And then she said, ma'am, when we get a chance, we'll speak with you. At that time, the only thing that kept running through my head was they're not giving me any answers. I got to get my kids here. And I had 3 high schoolers at the time, just like you guys. I had a freshman, a sophomore, and a junior. And I remember thinking to myself, I have to get my kids here. How am I going to get my kids here? I can't leave. And at that time, my oldest son came, and I had asked him to pick up my kids from school. And at that time, one of my sisters came up to me and she says, is this Manuel's car? It was already on social media. It was already on social media. And what's funny is that before she showed me that picture, I was on the phone with his boss. Because at 9:30 in the morning, you would think that he left at 4:30, he was already in his truck. And that's what I thought, because the first thing I thought it was he killed somebody. Oh my God, he killed somebody in his diesel. Never that he was the way he was. And when I got on the phone with his boss, I asked his boss what happened. They had to have called you at your truck. What happened? He goes, Kim, I don't know what you're talking about. What are you talking about? And I said, Manuel. I said, he was in an accident. He goes, hold on. He put me on hold, and then he gets back on the phone and he said, I checked the yard. My truck is still there. And instantly my heart dropped because he didn't make it to work. And then that's when my sister showed me the social media. His truck all mangled. A little while later, they came and they got me with one of my older daughters. And they told me, you have literally 2 minutes. To see him, we need you to identify him, and he needs to go directly to surgery. And as a nurse, blood don't bother me. Wounds don't bother me. It's not something that I get grossed out about or feel sick or nauseous or anything like that. So I was prepared to see that, but not prepared to see it on the person that it means the most to me. I walked in there, and they tried very hard to shelter me from what was really underneath that sheet, but there was blood soaking through everywhere. His leg, his foot got degloved. That's why they couldn't save it. And what I mean by degloved is literally from the heel all the way up was tore off of his bone. They tried to shield that from me. His arms were broken, like he said, his shoulder. His face looked like a basketball. He was black and blue, his neck, his eyes, everything. You can only see the slit where his eyes were. Couldn't see where his nose was. He was bleeding from his mouth. And I remember walking up to him and looking at him, and I went down to tell him I was there, and he instantly started moving, and they told me to shut up. The doctor literally told me to shut up, that I was agitating him and they needed to stabilize him. So I told him I loved him, and I told him he was going to pull out of this. He was going to be okay. My daughter kissed him, told him that she's here, and then we left. We walked out. He was in surgery for 6.5 hours. And he died on the table once during that surgery. So that initial, the officers going to the door, you can tell it was so hard for them to even tell me, let alone me hear it. You know, you never think this is going to happen to you, that somebody, that they're going to come to your door and tell you that your loved one is in the hospital. Unlike my husband, you know, like I tell him all the time, you know, we do this all the time. We do at least 12 schools a year for every 15 minutes. So we do this, we've been doing this for 6 years. And my husband does such a great job in telling his story, but like I tell him, he got the physical, but we got all the mental, because he's blind. He didn't see how his truck got mangled. He didn't see how broken he was. You know, it's something that you see in a movie and you think to yourself, oh my gosh, you know, you're crying for that person on that movie, or you're, you know, how they must feel. But when it happens to you, it's like being punched in the stomach. You know, you don't have words, you don't have a voice, because you're the unimaginable just happened to you. And for me, it wasn't something that I just had to worry about. I had children that now I had to inform that their father was, you know, may not make it. You know, I had to keep my composure because of my children. So it was kind of hard for me to deal with screaming inside in pain, and then trying to be this person, this strong, put together, it's going to be okay, positive mom, when inside I wanted somebody to tell me that it was going to be okay. So it was one of the most awful experiences or one of the most awful experiences I've been through my whole life. And I've lost children, so that says something.
Do we have the video ready that we can play? Okay.
You guys see the video when you guys see my truck? After I came home from the hospital, I kind of stopped, but nobody wanted to buy it.
He's never lost his sense of humor.
Thank you, Mrs. Reynosa, for sharing that, and thank you, Mr. Russ, for your comment as well. A question that I do have for you is, what is a significant detail that you remember from waking up after the hospital when you're fully conscious?
I remember from the time I woke up, I literally woke up to hearing my family crying. You know, my kids were on the left side of me. My wife was towards the bed. And I remember hearing, I don't remember the exact same words, but I remember hearing Count Dracula telling my wife to take me off the machine, that I had no chance to live. You know, you just seen everything you just did. The hospital gave up on me. All the doctors, even my surgeons, when I see them now, you know, they flipped out that I walked into their, or hopped into their office. And yeah, they're already ready to when I talked to the CHP officers out that was there, and they're already ready to charge her for vehicular manslaughter. And that was the first thing I woke up to, is hearing the doctor tell my family full of blood. Come to find out, that wasn't the first time they had told her that.
We have the video ready. Let's take a look.
Possible head on TC, Carpenter between Hatch and Whitmore.
Mercedes 48S3, en route for Colonel Sandy and Hatch.
4841
Mr. Russ,
copies.
I want to ask you one more question. And the last question.
4841, Person
What's
County.
the lesson that you want us to learn today, and you want the students here to learn today about this 100% preventable crime. Are there any final words about your survivor story that you'd like to share with the audience?
I believe I was put in this situation to turn my negative into a positive. I believe I was put in this situation to be able to help other lives on both ends, from falling a victim of circumstance and from anybody getting behind the wheel under the influence. So my main purpose I do this for is to help prevent that, to help prevent anything negative that could be preventable. Help prevent any incidents like my situation. My situation could be a lot worse. The person in the other car happened to run in my son's circle, so you don't know who it's going to be in the other car. Happened to run in my son's circle, and this person actually gone to my house and barbecued with us. This person actually knew my oldest son, and this person was actually headed back to a memory of life from somebody that had passed away from a drunk driver a week before. So you never know who's going to be in the car next to you, or who's going to be the person that somebody runs into. So my thing is to spread awareness and make our streets better, not only for all of us, but for our family members as well. And you never know, maybe the future kids. So that's my main goal and why I do this now.
Mrs. Reynosa, would you like to add anything?
It doesn't take much to get an Uber, a Lyft. Call your parents. I tell my kids that all the time. I don't care if it's 2 o'clock in the morning and you need a ride. I tell my kids to call me. I would rather be mad at you all the way home than be visiting you in the hospital or planning your funeral. It doesn't take very much at all. Nowadays, we do this to prevent what could happen to you guys. The choices that you could, right now you guys are, how many seniors do I have in here? Well, the seniors that are planning to go to college and everything, that could be ruined in 2.5 seconds. That's what we learn doing these every 15 minutes. It takes 2.5 seconds to make the wrong decision. The wrong decision. And like my husband said, you don't know who you're passing on the street. You could be sitting next to your best friend right now, and then God forbid somebody hit that person or you. How would you look at your friend in the face? How would you be able to deal knowing that your whole life just got obliterated with a 2.5 seconds decision? And I know some of you are sitting here just passing the periods and just waiting to go, because I could see you, a lot of you smiling. And you guys know who you are. And I only say that because it's kind of disrespectful, because my husband's sitting here broken, sharing his story that God forbid you guys will never have to experience. So I hope you take from this that you go to a party, you go to a kickback, you go to your friend's graduation party or whatever, call an Uber. Everybody here probably uses Uber on a day. Lyft, calls their mom, calls their dad for a ride. You don't have to give up your fun. You don't have to stop living your life. But think before you do something. Think ahead of time. How am I going to get home? That's what I want for you guys.
For those that wants to share my story, that 3-minute video you guys just seen, you can actually find it on my YouTube channel. And share this video. Please help spread this, the word and message of not getting behind the wheel under the influence. My YouTube, you can find on my YouTube channel. It's DJC Audio. It's 911 dispatch leadership in my life. It's never illegal.
Thank you so much, Mr. Manuel Rush and Mrs. Kim Reynosa. Thank you so much for sharing your story. And again, like Kim said, call an Uber, call a Lyft, call your parents. Even though they may be a little heated at the moment, if you wake them up at 2 or 3 in the morning, they still want you home safe with them because they love you. Thank you.
Applause, round of applause for our victim survivors, Manuel Russ, Kimberly Reynosa. Thank you so much, Heaven. Thank you, Miss Catherine. I would like to take a moment to really just make sure that everybody here is going to make the commitment to talk to their families. I represent the entire Central Valley of Mothers Against Drunk Driving, so I hear story after story, and I know the families that have been impacted. And how many of you know that from Thanksgiving all the way up to New Year's Eve, that's when the crash rate of lives being taken, whole cars. How many of you have somebody that they love? Raise their hand. A little brother, a little sister, a mom, a dad, an aunt, an uncle, a grandmother, a friend. Now imagine getting the call that Miss Kimberly got.
Like my husband says in his speech, I'm sorry to cut you up. My husband says in his speech, did you leave your house today and tell your parents you love them? You did? Good.
This was not his plan. This was not Mr. Russ's plan. This is never the plan. My 14-year-old daughter's been killed, not mine, but these are stories I've heard. This is never a plan. This can be prevented, but only if you back there, only if you hear this message and never get in the car with somebody that's impaired. Even if you suspect, even if a little thought says, I don't know if he had something to drink, I can't remember. If that thought passes into your head, do not get in that car. Take the grounding. My little kids are little. Take the time out. Take the moment and say, I'm going to sleep here. I'm going to call my mom. I'm going to pay the consequence of getting into trouble rather than your life. Do not get in the car, even with a trusted adult, if they are impaired this holiday season or for the rest of your life. Now, when you go home today, I want you to talk to your parents. I want you to call everybody that you're planning on gathering with on Christmas, on New Year's Eve, and say, what is the safety plan to get there and to get home safely? That safety plan needs to happen before the gathering. So today. Okay, because there's other tragedies out there where people are prepared for that, right? Grandma is passing away because it's her time, she's old, she's lived her life. Uncle's passing away because he's had cancer for 5 years. We're prepared, we've said goodbye. A crash of this tragedy is never prepared for, and sometimes it takes the whole car of everybody that they love. I drove here today with a car full of every single person that I love the most and would personally die for. Consume alcohol legally. How old do you have to be? 21. Wait until you're 21. And when you do decide, if you do decide to consume alcohol, please do it responsibly with people that you care about and never get behind a motor vehicle. One of the most dangerous things that everybody does that has a license is drive. Accidents happen all the time because driving is dangerous for humans. How many of you saw the car trailer outside? That like that without alcohol in their system. Cars can look like that because accidents happen. Lives can be taken because of an accident. This is not an accident. This is intentional. This is a crash. This is knowing that I'm going to drink and then not over. This is knowing that I'm going to drink and not call Uber and Lyft or my parents. Please do not let fear of consequences take your life and other people's on the road. Does that make sense? So raise your hand here today if this that was shared here today has changed your heart, your mind, and you are going to make a plan for the rest of your life. Because this is not about age. Raise your hand high. This is not about age. People drink at 50, people drink at 80, people drink at 40, people drink. Responsibly, I hope. Thank you all for your attention.
Can you guys please report straight to third period, please? Thank you for attending this talk.
Check 1, 2. So.
Yeah.
Here this morning, ladies and gentlemen, we have a message for you that's going to be very important for you, your family. It's just going to be a very, very important message. Okay? Mothers Against Drug Drivers have a message for you. And I want you guys to understand what it is and why we're doing this. And a couple of weeks ago, I got a message from Jasmine Rivas, right there. I got a message and asked me, hey, can we do this at McLane High School? McLane High School will be the only high school in the Central Valley that will do this. We're the only ones or the only high school that gets to get this message the way we're getting it today. And all thanks to Ms. Jasmine Rivas. And I want to introduce her because she's the coordinator, she's the director, she's the main person that's in charge of the Mothers Against Drunk Drivers presentations just like this. And we want to give you the message and thank you once again, teachers, students, for being here. And at this time, I would like to introduce Ms. Jasmine Rivas.
Thank you so much, Mr. Teran. What a privilege to have a vice principal like Mr. Teran, right? A round of applause for Mr. Teran. Yes, thank you so much, McLean students, for inviting Mothers Against Drunk Driving to give out this message. We are having a partnership with Community Talks and Mothers Against Drunk Driving to share the message about the real-life consequences of impaired driving. So to start us off today, I'm going to introduce Ms. Catherine Herr, a familiar face in our community. She's an anchor reporter for CBS 47 and KC24. Please give a round of applause for Ms. Catherine Herr. Next, I'm going to introduce Heaven Rodriguez, also a familiar face to many of you. She is a McLean student here, and she's also one of our MADD teen influencer. Big round of applause for Heaven Rodriguez. Next, I'd like to introduce to you Mr. Manuel Russ. He is our victim survivor here today to share his story about the real-life consequences of impaired driving. Please put your hands together for Manuel Russ. Last but definitely not least, I want to introduce to you his wife, Mrs. Kimberly Rayanos. She's here to share her family story about the real-life consequences of impaired driving. Please put your hands together for Ms. Kimberly Rayanos. Thank you.
Mr. Russ and Mrs. Reynosa, again, thank you for being here today for our MADD committee talk here at McLean High School. Our goal here is to make a change against drunk driving and to talk about the real-life consequences of irresponsible alcohol consumption.
Let's go ahead and roll the video. This is of a first-hand account of Mr. Russ's crash.
4841, Merced 1183.
4841, go ahead.
4841, possible head-on TC, Carpenter between Hatch and Whitmore.
Mercedes 48S3, en route for Cross Bandy and Match. 4841 copies, en route.
4841, Merced.
41, go ahead.
4841, Person County, the SOS 97, a fire still en route. 3 parties are pinned in one vehicle and 1 pinned in the other. Both lanes are 1125.
Oh, damn. Hemorrhaging. ¿Estás bien? Ahorita llegan. Ahí nomás quédate. Ahorita ya van a llegar.
Mercedes 48S3.
48S3, go ahead.
No, he's
Mercedes 1022 full information on scene. Need to roll the fact and evidence for examining fire.
Sonny, it's your truck.
Mercedes 48S3. 48L has been notified and also requesting 2 more units.
48S3, copy. 48L was notified and you're requesting 2 additional units.
Hey, brother, just stay right there, man. Try not to get out. You might hurt yourself more.
41, go ahead.
66758 Union 1 to E-towing 94 red Chevy Silverado pickup, 2 plates for evidence.
Copy 66758 Union 1 to E-tow 94 red Chevy Silverado pickup, 2 plates for evidence. Copy Cat 1 is going to be following the tow to the yard.
So yes, but just be advised we're at 115 and it's going to be 1180 traffic collision.
It's 10-4, copy, you have 11015, it's going to be 1180. 4841 information.
4841, go ahead.
4841, we have Memorial Landline advising their party is likely going to 44. And they have a possible ID of last of Russ, first of Manuel, middle of Alberto, 723 of 76. They're inquiring if we have confirmed an ID and if we have any contact info for the family.
4841, negative information on the family yet. I'll call Memorial. First at 4841, 1015 info.
4841, go ahead.
1015, last of Garcia. The charges are going to be 23152A and B, 14606 BC, and the hospital will call prior to her release. 48S3.
48S3, go ahead.
48S3, party of Garcia has been booked in 98.
10-4, copy, last of Garcia was booked for DUI, 98.
See the video, you can see a little bit of the backstory of what happened to Mr. Russ. So, Mr. Russ, my first question for you is how was your life prior to the crash, and what do you have to share for us? Can you tell us a little about yourself?
Yeah, so before my crash, I was just a family man. I would pretty much a workaholic, you can say, but I always make sure I had the weekends off. This way I can spend time with my family and my kids' events. You know, they were in sports. My daughter was in dance. My son's in football. And, you know, I made it a priority to make sure I had family time. And then other than that, you know, a lot of times I would barbecue. I would just, you know, just enjoy life to the fullest with my family.
Thank you, Mr. Russ. Mrs. Reynosa, tell us a little bit about yourself. What was your life like prior to the crash?
My husband was a truck driver, so he made it very easy for me to stay home and take care of my kids. So I'm a mother of 9, and so I, you know, basically was a homemaker. I was a housewife, and so your typical, you know, taking kids to school, you know, running around chasing after my kids, basically.
Thank you, Mrs. Reynosa and Mr. Russ. Mr. Russ, can you please tell us how your day was before the crash, prior to everything that happened, and how did everything change so quickly?
Yeah, so the day before, honestly, I had you know, I went to work, just a routine, you know, it was just a routine on mine. You know, I went to work that day and I actually had a good day. And I had got a matter of fact, I had got the dispatch that night before my incident. And to me, it was cool. I was gonna have a good day. It happened to be one of my favorite runs. You know, I had a run up to San Francisco, and I used to love that run. You know, I used to love that run, and I was gonna get home early and surprise my kids and pick them up from school the day of the incident.
Mrs. Reynosa, what was it like? How did you find out that your husband had been in a crash, and what was it like seeing him in the hospital?
Well, the only way I can describe it is, like I said before, it was like a big punch in the stomach. You know, I couldn't breathe. Felt like somebody turned the sound off. I couldn't hear anything. And my husband's crash was almost 5 o'clock in the morning. And the sheriff didn't show up to my house until 9:30 in the morning. It was nothing that stuck out in my mind when I seen them drive up to my house, because where we lived, you know, we don't live here locally, we live in Modesto. And so where we lived across the street from a park, and that park usually had a lot of homeless people that lived there. And so frequently, you know, MPD would come over and say, hey, you know, you have cameras, can we look at your cameras? You know, something happened. Or so it was never, when they drove up to my house, it wasn't something like, oh my God, what happened? You know, that never crossed my mind until I stepped out onto the porch. And then when I stepped out onto the porch, they asked me if I knew Emmanuel Russ. And instantly that punch came. And I asked them, I told them, yes, that's my husband. Is he okay? And they said that there's nothing that they can say right now, that I had to get to the hospital as quick as I can. And I remember feeling like my body was heavy, like I couldn't move, like this was not happening to me. This is not happening, like, you know. And I remember running into my house, and at the time, you know, I had just gotten home from, you know, let me back up a little bit. I just got home from taking my kids to school. I had junior high kids, elementary school kids, and I had a freshman, sophomore, and junior that just started school. Because this happened in September. And I remember getting home, you know, and then when the officers told me that, I ran back in my house. And I remember waking up my oldest daughter, because she wasn't in school at that time. And, you know, me and my daughter laugh about it now. But I remember running in there and trying to wake her up. And she wouldn't wake up. And so I kicked her. And I told her that her dad was in an accident. And when I showed up to the hospital, they wouldn't let me see him. They wouldn't tell me anything. They told me that they're working on him, that somebody would come out and talk to me. An hour went by. I wasn't getting no answers. The nurses weren't talking to me. I felt helpless. You know, your loved one is in the hospital. Nobody's telling you anything, whether he's dead or alive or, you know. And I remember calling his boss and asking his boss, like, what happened? Because he left at 4:30 in the morning. Police showed up to my door at 9:30 in the morning. So my thought process, him being a truck driver, he killed somebody. He got in a really bad accident, and he ended up killing somebody with his diesel. So how bad was the accident that they're working on him? And I remember talking to his boss and asking his boss, you know, what happened? They had to have called you. It's a company truck. What happened? And he told me, he goes, Kim, he goes, hold on. And he gets back on the phone after a minute and tells me that his truck is still sitting at his yard. That my husband never made it to the yard that morning. And my heart dropped. I couldn't think, I couldn't imagine what was going on. And I remember my sister came up to me and said, is this Manuel's truck? It was already on social media. It was already on the Modesto Fire Department's page. And then instantly, as soon as I seen his truck, I felt like my whole world just ended. Because I'm thinking, this happened almost 5 o'clock in the morning. They notified me at 9:30. It took me 20 minutes to get there. It's almost 10 o'clock in the morning and they're still working on him? And then to think, I turned around to myself and my older children, and I had to ask them to go get their siblings out of school. So imagine sitting here like right now, and campus security or your teacher tells you that somebody's in the front office, you're going home. And you're thinking to yourself, like my kids would say, oh, cool, I'm going home. Because that's what they did. That's what they told me. They thought, oh, I'm just going home. Until they seen their older brother standing in the office, swollen from crying. That was the hardest day of my life. One of the hardest days, I should say. Because it took them an hour to come and tell me that I had 2 minutes to identify him, sign consent, and then I had to leave. And I remember walking in that room with one of my daughters, and he was so broken. And he'll tell you too. He had a massive head injury in the back of his head, crushed his whole skull in the back of his head, which left his whole face literally swollen, black and blue. It was so swollen you could only see the slits of his eyes and the slit of his mouth. They tried to cover him up because, of course, you know, they don't want you to see a lot of the stuff that's going on. But me being a nurse, blood don't bother me, you know, cuts don't bother me, open wounds don't bother me. But to see the person that you love most in this world like that was awful. You know, I could see the blood from the top of his sheet where he broke his shoulder, he broke his forearm. I also seen where they had him all stabilized and everything because his femur came out of his leg and he degloved his foot. And if those of you who don't know what degloving is, it's like if somebody grabbed the back of your heel and took your whole skin off, muscle, everything, and you just have just your skeleton sitting there. That's what happened. So they tried to put it back. It took them 6 hours in surgery to tell me that he was in a coma, that he may not live. And it wasn't until maybe that evening that I found out that it was even a drunk driver. A drunk driver hit him. And then, I didn't get to say this last time, but when I dug a little deeper because I wanted to know what happened, I wanted answers. This girl that was driving the car, her alcohol level when they tested her, now when they tested her was after treatment. They told me this was around like 10 o'clock in the morning, so almost 5 hours later. Her alcohol level was 0.159. That's almost 3 times the limit. And she was under the influence of marijuana and cocaine. So to see all this and watching my husband that I've been with for 20-some years, almost 28 years at that time, the father of my 9 children, was the hardest thing I ever had to experience. And it wasn't something where, you know, you have somebody that's sick in your life, whether it be a parent or grandparent, and they're ill, and you learn to cope with the end result over time. This was just hit. I literally got hit with this as much as he got hit with that car. Trying to figure out now how I'm going to be a single parent, because that's what I am right now. You know, and it sucks for me to say that because my husband's here, he's alive. But in all reality, I'm a single parent. It's left him blind, totally blind. He cannot see any of you. No light, no shadow, no nothing. And he lost his leg. That is not something that anybody should experience at all.
Thank you for sharing that, Mrs. Reynosa. Mr. Russ, now I have some questions for you. What are significant details that you remember during your crash, while you're in the ambulance, and your stay at the hospital? What emotions were you feeling during that time?
Well, the day of the crash, the day of the incident, you know, it was a morning routine. You know, I got up like every morning, got up, got ready for work. My daughter used to sneak in the room in the middle of the night, and knowing that I would wake her up and tell her to sleep on my side of the bed. So this particular morning, I remember I woke her up, like every morning, woke her up and I told her, because she was born on my birthday, I woke her up and I told her, my birthday girl, why don't you sleep on my side of the bed? I remember her smile used to always start with her eyes. Her eyes just light up and just glow, followed with a big, cheesy, beautiful smile. And she said, okay, my birthday boy, I love you. I told her I love you too, baby girl. So from there, I remember going to my wife's side of the bed, and I woke her up, and I told her, all right, babe, I'm headed to work now. And she said, all right, babe, I love you. I told her I love you too. And she said, be safe. And I told her always, that was my routine. Now, remind you, that was the last time I've ever got to see my daughter's beautiful face, my wife's beautiful face. So from there, I went to the kitchen, got my coffee ready, my lunch, and I headed to work. Now, my way to work, the only way to get to work, unless I went the long way around, which take like an hour to get there. So my main way to work was 20 minutes away from work to where my diesel was parked at, was pretty much a back road. So this person's back road was my main way to work. And I remember going to work, and I remember seeing a car swerve into my lane. But at 4:50 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, I figured they were probably either headed to work or on their way home from work. So I didn't think nothing of it because they corrected themselves. Now, as we got closer, they went into my lane again. And it was, the estimated speed was 90 miles an hour head-on collision. And I remember my truck, I don't know if my truck was flipping, I don't know what I was doing, but I remember I was in a bad crash. I was in a bad incident. And I call it incident because an accident is just that's an accident. An incident is something that could be prevented. In this case, it was somebody's selfish act, decide get behind the wheel under the influence. So I remember when I was in this incident, and I remember in my head I was thinking, I'm in a bad crash. I gotta help the other people in the car. And what if they had kids? In my head, I started flipping out. Then it hit me. My son at the time, he was 12 years old. And so I remember looking towards the passenger side, and I started yelling his name, but he wasn't answering me, and I couldn't see him, and I lost it. Now, it took fire department 45 minutes with the jaws of life to get me out of my pickup. But I don't remember none of that. But what I do remember, I remember being in the ambulance, and I remember feeling my wife's hands on my chest and her telling me, babe, you're gonna be okay. Just let them do their jobs. And the crazy thing is that she was at home sleeping. She had no clue I was in this incident yet. And I mean, so much. But I remember waking up from my coma. And now, remind you before I go any further, it took 32 pints of blood to stabilize me for surgery. A total of 52 pints of blood in all. Now, average body's blood is what, 8 pints, 10 pints, something like that. So I had a brain bleed in part of my brain that was non-surgical. Now I have a scar in that part of the brain. But I remember waking up from my coma, and I remember hearing the doctor. I remember on the left side of me, my kids were crying, my wife was crying. I remember hearing the doctor, which sounded like Count Dracula, but he was telling my family to pretty much pull the plug on me because I had no chance to live. I had no way. I had no chance. Pretty much pull the plug on me. And I knew he was talking about me because all I could see was pitch black. I had no voice because I had a trach down my throat. My body felt paralyzed. So I don't know how I did it, but I sat up. As soon as I sat up, I remember hearing the nurses on the right side of me telling me, lay back down. And you look at, they're just pretty much flipping out, just tripping. I remember waking up again, and pretty much the same thing. My kids on the left side of me was crying. Count Dracula. With all my brain damage that I endured during this incident, that I wasn't gonna have no memory. I wasn't gonna remember her, let alone my own kids. So at that time, it got me upset. It got me upset, and I was mad, and I just rose my right hand, and I was asking for something to write with, and I started writing, and I remember the nurse on the right side of me saying, look, he remembers how to spell. But in all honesty, the joke's on them because I didn't know how to spell before my incident. But with that said, make a long story short, come to find out, they had to reconstruct my whole face. Now my right side of my face feels numb. Like the shot and the numbing is going away. It's always like 5-10 degrees warmer than my body is. They had to reconstruct my whole left side. They had to give me reverse shoulder replacement. They say my shoulder was the worst case they've ever seen. And pretty much all my bones were sticking out of my shoulder. My forearm was sticking out of my bone was sticking out of my forearm. My femur was sticking out of my leg, which your femur is the hardest bone in your body. I still need a knee replacement. In this case, the doctor with the most experience has only done 3 of this kind of knee replacement. That knee is not your average knee replacement because it's the side that I'm an amputee. My foot was degloved. So my face and my whole left side of my body is literally full of hardware and cadaver bones. I always say dead people's bones because I really can't pronounce it right. But I know I went more than just what I remember that morning, but that's pretty much summing a bunch of information down to that incident that happened that particular morning.
Thank you, Mr. Rush. And can you tell us too how this has had a lasting impact on your life? How is your life different today than it was before you headed to work that morning?
Well, I was real active. You know, I was a real active person. I was always on the go. I was always spending family time. I was all of my kids' events. You know, I used to be for like my son's football events. You know, I used to do the scoreboard. I used to do announcing. I used to play music. You know, I was always barbecuing. I was always just having fun, enjoying life to the best I can, and with my family. And after the incident, for example, I got a granddaughter that was just born. I have no clue what she looks like. I got my grandkids growing up, my kids growing up, and I have no clue what they look like. My daughters, you know, when they get married, you know, just part of the lifetime ripple effect. I won't be able to walk them down that stage and see their beautiful smile. I won't be able to enjoy seeing them happy. You know, I mean, I'm blessed to be here, but it changes everything because, you know, I can't just get up and go and barbecue, go to the store like I used to, work on the car, go to work. You know, everything just was a complete turnaround. And just from being a very active person to pretty much doing almost nothing. You know, now I do what I can, but now I'm like 90% limited of what I used to do.
Thank you, Mr. Russ. Mrs. Reynosa, the same question goes for you. How did this crash impact your life and the life of your families?
Well, like I mentioned before, it's impacted a lot where I'm now his caretaker, his full caretaker. I take care of him full time. And like I said, it's like being a single parent. You know, before I had a partner that would do 100% to my 100%. I'd asked him to do something, I got it, babe, and he'd be on it. Now it's like I'm doing it all myself. You know, my kids are older now. You know, my youngest is now 16. My oldest is now 30. So, you know, they're basically adults. So it's not as hard as it was in the beginning of all this. But in the beginning it was hard because right after his accident, my landlord was a slumlord and he evicted us. We were homeless for a year. So all that time, you know, I had to figure it out. I had to figure out where we were going to get money, how we were going to eat. Before I didn't have to. I had the pleasure of being home and he would work and I'd take care of everything else. I think the hardest part now for me is not doing it, you know, because as a parent you do it like you breathe. I think the hardest part now is watching the things that we were supposed to share together gone. Like he said, I have a brand new baby girl, a brand new granddaughter. She's only a month old. And to watch him hold her and love on her and talk to her like he can see her breaks not only my heart, but my daughter's. I've had 3 kids graduate from high school since his accident, and he was there. He was the loudest one cheering. But I seen I've seen this person I've shared my whole life with. I've seen the broken in his eyes that he can't see it. That's what it's left for me and my children, is the aftermath, the after of seeing all the things that he should be experiencing with me, the things that he should be experiencing with his daughters, the things he should be experiencing with his sons are gone. I think through all of it, I think that's the most hardest part to deal with, is because we can't just put this behind us. We live with this every single day. So I think that that's the most hardest thing that we've had to deal with.
Thank you, Mrs. Reynosa. Mr. Russ, what keeps you going? What motivates you after the crash?
Well, what motivates me is turning a negative into a positive. You know, I believe that I was saved. I believe I was saved to be able to sit here in front of you guys right now, turning something so negative into you guys' positive. And I really hope you guys take this in and make a positive out of my story. You know, I've always been the type that tried to always try and keep it positive and keep it moving. For example, after my incident, I taught myself how to DJ, completely blind. So what keeps me going is my family, my kids, my grandkids, my wife. And what also keeps me going is doing this, what I'm doing now, to try to prevent it from happening to anybody else. Trying to prevent this, people getting behind the wheel under the influence, and trying to prevent anybody falling a victim of this circumstance that I fell under. So that's my main thing that keeps me going every day.
Thank you, Mr. Russ. Mrs. Reynosa, can you please tell us what sacrifices you had to make after this crash for your family?
A lot of my time. I mean, a lot of my time goes to taking care of him. At first, it was hard. Now it's a lot easier because he's able to do things on his own. He's learned to walk with a prosthetic, so that helps. Before, I had to wheel him around in a wheelchair. When we thought he possibly could, save his leg, I'm the one that had to clean it. And the pictures you guys seen in the video of his foot, that was right before he was amputated. So you can imagine if, like I told you before, if it was degloved and they put it back and sewed it up, I was the one taking care of his wounds. So there was a lot of time that I was not present with my kids, a lot of times that I had to focus on him. My children as well. They lost a lot of schooling, a lot. He was in a coma for 3.5 months. So for 3.5 months, they didn't go to school. And the school even threatened to take me to SARB, which is, I don't know if anybody knows what that is, but it's where they put you in front of a panel and ask you why your kids aren't going to school, and you can get in trouble. And honestly, like, I didn't care. My kids were grieving next to my husband, and I didn't care about school, but at that time, they had to sacrifice that, because afterwards, they graduated, but it was a long road. It was a lot of time, a lot of making up for time that they had to do. So there was a lot of sacrifice that they did. Sacrificing just everything. It's a lifelong thing. With his injuries, it's not something that we could say, oh, it happened, oh, back when he got in an accident, and oh, he's okay now. No, he's okay now, but there's a lot of things that my kids won't be able to do or share with my husband because of him being blind. My kids have taken time off work because I got hurt at work myself, so they were taking care of both of us. When something like this happens, it doesn't just happen to one person, it happens to their entire family. And I think that this has made my kids a lot stronger too, is because they've had to learn to come back from something that they thought, that was going to end something that they loved. You know,
I remind you, during the whole time they were next to my bedside, the only thing they were being told from the hospital, from the doctors, was that I was going to die. Because when I woke up from my coma, listening to the doctor telling my family to pull the plug, that wasn't the first time they were telling my family this.
No, I think that was the fourth time when he woke up that day. I remember that. That was the fourth time that doctor came in and told me that he has brain damage, that they can't wake him up, and they believe that he is too dependent on the machine, and that I need to talk to my kids about taking him off the ventilator. That was the fourth time when he woke up. But if you can imagine like what we were going through, because he was so much in a coma, they couldn't wake him up. They tried medication, they tried a bunch of things, and he wouldn't wake up, but I couldn't give up. Something told me he was still in there. Now, if you can imagine, because of the doctor, the last time when the second to the last time before he woke up, the doctor stood over him, and I remember him putting his fist, so if you ball up your fist, and you put it to his chest, your chest bone, and if you push down really hard and you rub on it, that hurts. If you do it to yourself, that hurts. And he was doing that to my husband, and he made him like really like red and almost purple. He goes, "Ma'am, there's nothing there. Nothing, look, nothing." And I still couldn't. I told him, "No, get out of the room." The next time he came around, between these times that he told me, it were like 2 weeks apart, 3 weeks apart. So when he remembers waking up, it was months. And I remember him telling me that, and there's something inside of me that says, nope, nope. So if you can imagine that, that was hard to see, hard to go through, hard to try to make a decision of do I just take him off life support? You know, my kids are standing around and everything. So I'm blessed that he's here, but it's been hard. It's been really hard.
We have just a few minutes left, and I want to ask you, Mr. Rush, last question. What do you want the teens to know? This is a 100% preventable crime. Your final words about your survivor story you'd like to share with the audience.
My final words, I want to thank you guys for letting me turn my negative into a positive. But this is something, you know, that video right there you guys watched, if you guys go to my YouTube channel, you can share this with a friend and share my story to as much as people as possible. My YouTube is DJ See No Evil, and that video is 911 dispatch, a day to change my life. But I also want to put out there to you guys that, you know, even if somebody gets behind the wheel intoxicated, okay, for example, me, you know, this person is serving time, but it could be 10, 15 years down the line, because now that I'm accessible to seizures, if I was to have a seizure and fall, and that was pretty much in my life, or if I'm in the middle of a seizure, surgery that I still have, you know, I still got a couple more surgeries to go, and I was to pass away because of that. If I was to pass away to do anything that has to do dating this incident, this crash, they would still go pick this person up. This person can be moved on, have kids, or whatever the case may be, living a good life. They would still pick this person up and charge her for vehicular manslaughter. So this person could still be charged with more charges later on in life. So it's not just the end. So my main thing now is to help prevent on both sides, help people not falling a victim of circumstance, like my case, and help people not be getting behind the wheel under the influence. Because if I can help people not getting behind the wheel under the influence, then I'm helping saving somebody's life in the long run from both sides.
Thank you both so much for sharing your story today, Mr. Manuel Brush and Mrs. Kim Reynosa.
So much. Everybody, big round of applause for Mr. Manuel Russ, Mrs. Kim Reynosa. I know that was a lot to intake, right? So please go home and share this message with your family. The holiday seasons are here. We just passed Thanksgiving. Christmas is on its way. New Year's Eve is on its way. And what are you going to gift your family? His love. Make sure that you wrap this up in a box, write it down, and give it early. And you say, what is your safety plan home? Not just this holiday season, every holiday season. Because the crash rates go up during this holiday season, your whole family may be driving sober straight to church. But yet, so-and-so decided to drive impaired. That could be cannabis, that could be alcohol, that could be prescription medication. They should not be driving under the influence. So if you have, how many of you have somebody that you love? A little brother, a little sister, an aunt, an uncle, a neighbor, a friend. Let's try that again. How many of you have somebody that you love? Every hand should go up. Yourself. And if you have somebody that you love, I want you to close your eyes, and it could have been this morning. I don't want you to imagine driving with them in the car. Then I want you to imagine being in a hospital and they're all gone except you. Hopefully you were not impaired when driving that vehicle. How many of you have your license? Permit? One day you will. So how old do you have to be to drink legally? Alcohol. 21. What about cannabis? How old do you have to be to consume cannabis recreationally, legally? Not 18. 21. Okay, so we highly encourage you to wait until you're 21. Never, ever get into a vehicle where somebody has been consuming alcohol, consuming cannabis, that is not safer than alcohol, consuming prescription medication, even if it's their prescription, more than likely that bottle says do not operate this vehicle. So please, what are your plans for the rest of your life when somebody is impaired, whether that be you, your friends, your family, people you trust, and they may be saying, I'm going to operate this vehicle? Make the plan before the gathering happens. Because once the gathering happens, tia, abuelita, grandma, mom, dad, they may be ready to consume, and that plan may be fleeing. Okay? So the power is in you. The reason why this is 100% preventable is not because of me. It is because of you and you making this decision today. Raise your hand if you're never going to drive impaired after hearing this story. Raise your hand if you're never going to get in the car, even if you suspect the smallest thought can save your life.